Welcome you today to Torah study. We're learning Talmud, a fascinating story in the Talmud about a peculiar custom of an extraordinary sage, and the message, the lesson that we learn today about the extraordinary power of sight. Today's Torah study has been generously sponsored by Corina Nadel in honor of a successful surgery today. We wish her a refuah shlema, complete and speedy recovery to Krena Bastova Kela. The week's Torah study has been sponsored in loving memory of Frida Hochman by her son Ed Hochman, and the month's Torah study has been dedicated by Daniel Geiker in gratitude to God Almighty for the extraordinary blessings that He has bestowed upon Michael ben Miriam. May the blessings continue to flow, and may they never stop. Brachas ad beli dai. We are learning Talmud this morning, and good morning to you, Winston in Indonesia, and Ed Hochman. Good morning, Rabbi, on Facebook. Nice to see you, Steve, with us in the live studio audience. We are learning this book, and I am on page 258. 258. Actually, no, 259. Page 260. An unusual practice of a Talmudic sage on page 50. If you don't have the book, fear not. Just listen along with me. We're learning about Ein Hara, the evil eye. We're going to be learning about the power of vision and its extraordinary impact upon our lives. Says the Talmud, Rabbi Gidel would sit at the gates of the Mikveh, where the women would go to immerse themselves. Now, let me explain what this is talking about. The Mikveh is a very, very fundamental and important practice in Jewish life. In fact, it is the very bedrock of Jewish life. It is the foundation of a Jewish community. Why? Because when it comes to a marriage, it's one thing to invite God into your brain through studying Torah, or inviting God into your kitchen through keeping kosher. It's another thing to invite God into your home by putting up a mezuzah. But where it really matters, in the most sensitive area, is being able to have the courage to invite God into your bedroom. This is why the bris is on that sensitive part of the body. Because we're saying, God, we're making a mark in our most sensitive part of our bodies, where our evil inclination is strongest. We're saying, here we're having a sign of our commitment to Hashem. And that really is what the mikveh is. What's the mikveh? It's a biblical commandment where a woman who is menstruating is considered spiritually impure. Spiritually impure. What does that mean? She's not dirty, God forbid. It means that spiritually, she has to separate from her husband. Just to explain this idea. So what is menstruation? It means releasing the blood, when the blood comes out. That blood could held the potential of human life. Had the woman conceived, then she wouldn't have menstruated. A pregnant woman does not menstruate. The blood which is being evacuated held the potential, the lining of the uterus held the potential of nurturing human life that would have become a baby, a new life. But because the woman did not conceive, that potential for human life is being evacuated, and therefore it's a semi-death. It's at least the death of potential life. So just like in a cemetery, there's the law of impurity. That when you go to a cemetery, you got to go to the mikveh afterwards in order to purify yourself before entering into the holy temple in Jerusalem or eating certain kinds of holy foods. So too, when a woman menstruates, she's considered spiritually impure, and she now has to, what is the implications of that? It also implicates her ability to enter into the holy temple and eat the certain holy foods in temple times. But specifically, it means that she's not allowed to be with her husband, not even physical touch. For the 5 days of the menstruation, plus 7 clean days afterwards, about 12 days. Now, there's a lot to talk about the laws of the mikveh. This is not really the forum for that. So just having briefly explained the meaning of the law of the mikveh, the menstruating woman would have to go to the mikveh about once a month. I mean, it is once a month unless she's pregnant or unless she's nursing when she also doesn't menstruate. Then what happens is she goes to the mikveh, right? Coming out of the mikveh, what's fascinating is that what took science thousands of years to discover, we Jews have been doing millennia ago. Why? Because if you do the math, you work out that if a woman is separated from her husband, just physically. They live in the same house and they sleep in separate beds, by the way. An observant Jewish home has 2 beds in the master bedroom. By separating from her husband from physical contact for 2 weeks, what happens? It means that 2 weeks before the next period is when she's going to be with her husband. And what happens 2 weeks before the period? That is the time of ovulation. And if you do the math, if the husband is abstaining for 2 weeks and they're together on that night, then the highest chances of conception are when the woman comes out of a mikveh. He's been abstaining for 2 weeks. They have had verbal foreplay for 2 weeks. I mean, talk about a meaningful relationship, right? This is amazing. This is magic in the master bedroom, right? And what happens now is that after 2 weeks of abstinence and verbal communication, now they both have great desire for each other, hopefully, on the night of ovulation, highest chances of conception. So what happened was when Rav Gidel would go and sit at the gates of the mikveh, when the woman would go to immerse themselves, why would he do this? He would do this in order to show them the proper method of immersion, to make sure that they knew how to immerse themselves properly in the mikveh, because it's not so simple. You got to do it in a way where the water completely envelops every single part of your body at the same time. So, for example, if you're wearing something tight, then the water's not going in that part of the body. If you're clenching your fingers when you're under the water, then the water's not going inside of your fist, right? Also, you got to make sure that your body's clean from any paint or nail polish or Band-Aids or bandages or hair coloring and that kind of stuff, right? So he would make sure that they would immerse properly. He would say, immerse this way, immerse this way. The rabbis asked them, is the rabbi not afraid of the evil inclination causing him to sin? I mean, seriously. I mean, obviously he wasn't with them in the mikveh. That would have been completely inappropriate. But he was like seeing all these women that were just, about to go to their husbands. I mean, it's like, it's not even appropriate. It's like, it's not modest. Like, what on earth was this rabbi doing? Well, you're not worried about the evil inclination and getting all sorts of thoughts in your head. He replied, in my eyes, they are merely like white geese. They do not entice me at all. Rav Gidel was on such a high spiritual level that such matters didn't affect him. Now, this is very difficult Talmud to understand without Tanya. But we who've learned Tanya, we know that there's such a thing as a tzaddik and a rasha and a bain. And a tzaddik is a perfect Jew who's managed to transform his evil inclination. He has no desire for evil. A bainani, an intermediary Jew, is one who struggles within but never allows it to express itself on the outside. And the rasha is the evil one is the one who struggles within and he expresses it on the outside. So assuming that Rav Gidel meant to say that he had successfully transformed his evil inclination to good, what he effectively is saying is that he doesn't have an evil inclination. When he sees the woman, they're like white geese. It's like, I don't get excited about when I see geese. I don't get excited when I see women. There's nothing to get excited about because I don't have an evil inclination. So in the context of Tanya, you can understand this. But now this Talmud is about to get much more interesting in just a moment with Rabbi Yochanan's behavior. Good morning to you, Terry from Atlanta, Rob from Chicago, and Marty from New York City. And Keith, Tazay, Keith is with us from, I think he is in New York. Elaine from Ibis, where is he? Oh, maybe Keith is in Nain. Terrific. Good to see you, Keith. Well, to know that you're there. Now check this next piece of Talmud out. Here goes. Another Amora, another Talmudic sage, Rabbi Yochanan too, would go and sit by the gates of the mikveh, where the woman would go to immerse themselves. And he explained, when the Jewish women come out from their immersion, they will look at me, and they will have children as beautiful as I. How's that for an interesting and peculiar custom, hey? Now, a bit of background here. Rabbi Yochanan was known to have been extraordinarily handsome. The Talmud elsewhere states that Rabbi Yochanan was one of the most beautiful men who ever lived in the history of men. When the Talmud asks, if so, then why did he not make it into the list of the top 4 most beautiful men? The Talmud answers, don't take this personally, I do not shoot the messenger. The Talmud answers, because he didn't have a beard. Interesting, hey? He didn't have a beard. I don't know why he didn't have a beard. Maybe it didn't grow. I'm not sure what happened. But the fact that he didn't have a beard means that he didn't have masculine beauty. His beauty was more feminine beauty. So anyways, he was a beautiful, beautiful human, beautiful person physically. He also had obviously beautiful internal, as we're about to find out. Joe G, good morning from West Palm Beach. Good to have you with us. So here's what happens. Here's what happens. Very important concept over here. The thoughts of parents at the time of conception has a profound influence on the nature of the child that they conceive. This is Tanya chapter 2, brought down from the Kabbalah, from the Zohar. Did you know this, Steve? The thoughts of parents at the time of conception has a huge impact on the child. In fact, in Reishis Chachma, which is a Kabbalistic text, it says over there that the love between parents during marital intimacy of conception has a direct impact upon the wisdom, the chachma of the child. In other words, whether your child's going to be an idiot, God forbid, or, the guy's going to cure cancer or COVID-19. Remember, we don't have a cure for COVID-19. We have a vaccine, hopefully, but we don't have a cure. So if your kid is going to be the one who's going to be the one to cure the world's problems or maybe solve peace in the Middle East, that depends on how much love was between you and your spouse at the time of conception. In other words, were you thinking only about your own pleasure? Or were you thinking about the other person? Was it about what the other person can do for me? Or was it what I can do for you? Was it about taking? Or was it about giving? Remember the word ahava, love in Hebrew, at its root has the word hav, which means give. Love is about giving. Love is not 50-50. Love is 100% giving. That's love. God forbid, in a case of rape where there is no love, unfortunately, such a kid has the odds stacked against him. Not much love going on over there, obviously. But in the case of true love, can you imagine after 2 weeks of abstaining, the kind of desire and yearning and passion and love and mutual dignity and respect? You waited 2 weeks for this? That is present between husband and wife is extraordinary. That's wise children that are to be conceived. Interestingly, we see this idea also. So that was the thoughts of the parents at the time of birth. But now the visual, what you see at the time of conception also has a profound impact. We see that Jacob, when he was trying to negotiate a deal with his father-in-law about the sheep, I'm not going to get into the whole story, it's in Genesis. When Jacob was trying to mate the sheep, and certain kinds of sheep were his and other kinds of sheep were not his, what he did is that he made a visual at the place of where the sheep would mate, so that while they were mating, they would see speckles and dots, so that they would conceive sheep with speckles and dots, the ones that he wanted. What you see at the time of conception has a profound impact upon what you give birth to. Another example, we see this in the Talmud, is during the destruction of our second temple by the Romans. The Romans knew that there were beautiful children in Israel. So what they did is that these cruel, vicious Romans would take the gorgeous girls and the handsome boys. They would take them as slaves back to Rome, and they would tie the boys and girls to their bedposts, so that during the time of their conception with their spouses, they would look into the eyes of these beautiful boys and girls with the hopes of conceiving children like them. Right? Now that is not make-believe. What you see at the time of conception and close before it has a profound impact upon what you're going to give birth. And that is the reason why Rabbi Yochanan, in this extraordinary move of the Talmud here, he would sit at the gates of the mikveh, at the exit gates of the mikveh, so that the women would gaze upon his physical beauty with the hopes of having children as beautiful as him. By the way, even today, women, based upon this piece of Talmud, women, when they leave the mikveh, you always notice there's a beautiful picture of the Rebbe when they leave the mikveh. Why? Because it's the holiness of the Rebbe that they want to see when they come out of the mikveh, so that they can aspire to have children as holy, chasidim, as holy as the Rebbe. You're always supposed to look at a holy person. When you look at the face of a holy person, it has a profound impact upon you, especially when it's at highly impressionable times, such as before conception, at the time of ovulation, coming out of the mikveh. Now, back to the Talmud. Rabbi Yochanan too would go and sit by the gates of the mikveh, where the women would go to immerse themselves. He explained, when the Jewish women come out from their immersion, they will look at me and have children as beautiful as I am. The rabbis told him, is the master not afraid of an evil eye? Are you not afraid of an evil eye? Bringing attention to beauty and other such qualities can attract an evil eye, like jealous attention, which can cause you misfortune. Rabbi Yochanan replied, I am a descendant of Joseph, the son of Yaakov, over whom an evil eye has no power. As it is written in the blessings that Jacob blessed Joseph on his deathbed, it says, Ben Porat Yosef, Ben Porat Alei Ayin, a charming son is Joseph, a charming son to the evil eye, or a son who overrides the eye. What this means is, Rabbi Abahu said, for the purpose of deriving the message of this verse, do not read the words Alei Ayin, but rather Olei Ayin, rising above the evil eye. That is, Joseph and his descendants are not affected by the evil eye. Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina, however, said that we know that the evil eye has no power over the descendants of Joseph from a different verse. It says, and may they be plentiful, multiply plentifully like fish within the land. It says by Menashe and Ephraim, the blessing that they received in the last portion of Genesis was their grandfather Jacob blessed them that they should multiply like fish within the land. What does that mean? Why like fish? Just as fish in the sea are covered with water and thus are inconspicuous to the eye, thus the evil eye has no power over them. So to the offspring of Joseph, the evil eye has no power over them because they've been blessed to be like fish. Or if you prefer, a different reason the evil eye has no power over Joseph and his descendants, and is because an eye such as Joseph, that eye that did not want to benefit from what was not his. Remember Joseph, who could have benefited, he could have gazed upon his master's wife in Egypt, who desperately wanted him to gaze at her in order to perform a promiscuous relationship with her. So Joseph, who refused to indulge in that which was forbidden to his eye to see, therefore the evil eye has no power over him and his descendants. In any event, here's what we're holding. We know that Rabbi Yochanan would sit at the gates of the mikveh. He was not afraid of the evil eye because he was a descendant of Joseph. This Rabbi Yochanan would do this in order to impact the ovulating woman at the time of their coming out of the mikveh with the hopes of having children that were as beautiful as him. So let's expand upon this idea, the power of sight. Our Gemara states that by looking at Rabbi Yochanan's handsome visage, the woman would bear children as beautiful as I am. For the sage's pleasing appearance would fix itself in their minds and influence their thoughts, and hence their children's appearance at the time of conception. But the Gemara elsewhere goes further, saying that Rabbi Yochanan also reasoned that the woman encountering him on the way at the mikveh would bear children learned in Torah like me. So not only his outer beauty, but also his inner beauty would impact them. The process here is less understandable. For the woman looking at Rabbi Yochanan did not see an image of his scholarship. How then did they elevate the scholarship of their children by just merely seeing him? The answer, writes Rabbi Shalom Tzvi Shapiro, lies in appreciating the power of sight. Just as what we hear makes an impression on our thoughts, what we see makes an impression on us and connects us to it. By observing Rabbi Yochanan and contemplating his greatness in Torah, the women fixed their minds on him and his achievements. They developed an appreciation for his noble life work and worked up a desire to see his path to greatness be followed by their own children. These thoughts and ambitions filled their minds at the time of conception, and as a result, they shaped the souls of their children, thus conceived. Friends, I want you to understand what's going on over here. What you see has a profound impact upon your thoughts. Thoughts become things. What you see has a profound impact upon who you become. You know, the Rebbe spoke about this idea about not showing children, young children, non-kosher animals, pictures of non-kosher animals. You know, we buy kids these cute little toys with zebras and giraffes in them and lions. Zebras are not kosher animals and lions are not kosher animals. Giraffes are kosher animals. The Rebbe said, don't show children non-kosher animals, even pictures in a book or printed on a pajamas, because that will have a profound impact upon them. It's kind of like a little baby tree, a little tree, cute little tree. And you run a little scratch on it. You make a little scratch that's invisible to the eye. You can't even see the scratch. You know what's going to happen when that tree grows older? It's going to be a huge, ugly gash, a scar in the side of that tree. Because when the child is that young, they are so incredibly impressionable. Do not expose them to visuals that are not kosher. And friends, this is where I would like to encourage you to consider the following idea. That TVs in our homes are like putting a garbage trash can in the middle of your home. We don't put garbage trash in the middle of our home. You know, you keep it in the basement, in the parking garage, you're like out of the way. You don't put the trash in the middle of your living room or your dining room. What's happening on the television is that you're getting the most obscene, borderline pornographic images on the visual, on the screen that is being pumped into your vision all the time. And I want you to be mindful and conscious of what it is that you're allowing into your most precious piece of real estate, which is your mind. Why would you do this? You may not notice it within hours or days, but in the long term, it has a profound impact upon us. What we see is very, very powerful. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz was the Rosh Yeshiva of Mir. He grew up next to my father, my grandfather in Jerusalem, across the road. He expands on this theme by highlighting various sources that demonstrate the eye's ability to connect an observer to the person or thing being seen. In one example, the Torah describes our forefather Jacob's efforts to bless his grandchildren, the two sons of Joseph. After noting the fact that Jacob's eyes had dimmed from old age, leaving him unable to see the two youths before him, it tells how Yaakov hugged and kissed them before bestowing his blessing. In his commentary to the verse, Sforno explains that had Yaakov been able to see, he could have attached his soul to them by looking at them, and that would have enabled his blessing to take effect. It was only because he was deprived of this method of connecting with his grandchildren through seeing, because he was blind, that he prefaced his blessing with another instrument of closeness and connection, that of hugging and kissing. So this is the powerful power of seeing. And Keith, I know you're in Maine. You're in some sort of photography workshop over there in Maine. Keith is a person who believes in the power of visual. He invests in photography. So Keith, bear in mind the power of the visuals. Keith gave me a couple of gifts of some beautiful photographs that he took, and I like looking at them because they have a nice impact upon me. I find them relaxing and calming to look at. But if you are looking at things that are not appropriate, they can have an impact upon your soul. Elaine says it would be an interesting discussion about Yaakov, who truly only loved one wife. Also King David. Elaine, I'm not sure what you're referring to, that Jacob only truly loved one wife. Okay, fair enough. But how does that connect to what we're talking about? Please elaborate so I'll know a little more context. Thank you. Okay, good. Let's go a little further. Another example relates to the generation of the wilderness, the Jews who traveled through the desert, whose members had forfeited the privilege of entering the promised land and settling it as the Jewish homeland. They were fated to die before even setting their eyes upon the land, let alone living in it. According to the Medrash, the curse placed upon them prevented them from seeing even the produce of the land, which Canaanite traders would bring to the Jewish camp in the wilderness to sell. If a member of the cursed generation would so much as see the fruit brought from the Holy Land, they would instantly die, apparently because seeing the produce was tantamount to seeing the land in which they were grown. So since they were cursed not to enter the promised land, by merely seeing the fruits of that land, that would somehow cause them to die. Interesting, right? Because they were connected. I mean, that generation all died in the desert, so I guess they wouldn't allow any foreign imports from outside of the camp, I guess, if they wanted to live. Interestingly, though, it says that Moses wanted to see the land, right? And he did see the land. Let's hear about this. A third example arises from a teaching recorded earlier in this tractate. After instructing Moses to climb a mountain and survey the promised land that he would not live to enter, God told Moses to go to the forefathers and say in his name, "The promise that I made to you regarding the Holy Land, I've already fulfilled, giving it to your descendants." Now, Rashi here points out that this report of a mission accomplished was sent before the land was even conquered. How could Moses tell the forefathers up in heaven that God has fulfilled his promise of giving the land to the children of the forefathers if they hadn't yet conquered it? But the promise could nevertheless be seen as fulfilled, since Moses did see the land. And that long-distance survey could be considered equal to conquering the land. That's the power of sight. When you've seen something, it's like you've owned it already. Finally, the sages explain why the Torah prescribes the blue dye, the tcheles, is that blue string which we're commanded to put upon the fringes of our tzitzis. Now, we don't do it today because we've forgotten the tradition of exactly what is the blue dye, what is the origin, which sea creature is the blood origin of that blue dye. So we don't do it today until Mashiach comes and he'll remind us which one it is. But the purpose of the techeles, the blue dye, the blue string in the tzitzis, is the color of techeles is similar to that of the sea, and the sea's color resembles that of the sky. And the sky's color is similar to that of a sapphire stone, which is similar to the throne of glory. So the blue looks like the sea looks like the sky looks like sapphire, and sapphire looks like the throne of glory. Anthropomorphically speaking, somehow sapphire is the color of God's throne, whatever that means. So interesting, the Ten Commandments were engraved on two tablets of sapphire, not stone, but sapphire stone. Right? The end result, explains Rashi, is that when we see the tzitzis of our talis, we see that blue dye, that the tzitzis wearer comes to recognize the one who sits in the throne of glory. Thus, seeing the blue-dyed fringes, whose color signifies the throne of glory, is tantamount to standing before the throne of glory and the divine presence. The eyes are indeed the window to the soul. This, friends, is the idea that we're learning about today, the power of visual. The power of visual upon our state of mind. So be careful what you allow into your home. You wouldn't allow a murderer or a rapist into your home. So why would you allow the visual of such filth, of such evil, of such corruption into your home? What you watch on Netflix has a profound impact upon what goes on in your mind and heart and within your soul. You are what you eat, but today we've learned that you become what you see. Let's be conscious and mindful of what we allow into our homes. Indeed, the Torah tells us, Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'chol sha'arecha. So, policemen and judges, you should establish at all of your gates. And the Hasidic interpretation of that is, that doesn't necessarily mean only the gates of your cities, but the gates of your temple, your eyes, your ears. Your eyes and your ears. Be mindful, have policemen and judges to be mindful of what you allow yourself to hear. No lashon hara, hear no evil, see no evil, right? Make sure not to allow any evil into any negative energy into your eyes and into your ears, because especially your eyes has a profound impact. You see evil energy, you will experience evil energy. Elaine says, the feeling of love of time of conception, its effect on the child. Ota, very, very interesting, Elaine. So since Jacob truly loved Rachel, therefore, Joseph rises to become the most successful of all of his brothers. He was head and shoulders above them. There's no doubt about that. So that was certainly, Elaine, certainly a beautiful example of this point. King David also, he loved Bathsheba more than anybody else. And that's why his son Solomon ultimately became the king. And he was the wisest of all men. That must have been an extraordinary love that King David had with Bathsheba. He was the wisest of all men. Keith agrees with me. Thank you, Keith. I'm glad you got that on the visual. And to conclude, Mary Kay has joined us this morning as well. Good morning to you, Carrie. Thank you very, very much, everybody, for joining us this morning. Special blessings to Corey Crandall, Bas Toiva Kayla, who should experience a complete and speedy recovery. In the merit of today's Torah study, may you have a successful surgery. Corey, we're thinking about you and praying for your complete recovery. Hopefully good news. To Ed Hockman, in loving memory of his mother, Frida, on the elevation of his soul on the occasion of a yard site this week. And to Daniel Geiker, may the health of Michael ben Miriam continue to increase and improve. And may he live many long years, happy, healthy years, together with all of your family, from strength to strength. Amen. Thank you very much, everybody. Shalom, and have a wonderful day. I promise you